Good morning, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about food in D&D, literally how to run food in your games, how to handle it, and how to actually make it fun and use it to make your games better. We're gonna go over a quick overview of the rules in the current D&D books, which are surprisingly light when it comes to food, and I'm going to give you 2 ideas for how you can make running food in your campaigns actually a lot more fun. Let's dive into it. The great thing about D&D and other similar TTRPGs is that it provides an escape from real life. With that being said, some of us are gluttons for existential punishment. Some of us want to roleplay the stuff we do every day anyway, just for the fun of it, in a setting where we are playing maybe some kind of barbarian or rogue or spellcaster instead of just being who we are in our everyday lives. This is fun. This is creative, narrative-driven storytelling, and it's about the creation of the intellectual art of the gameplay. With that being said, there are surprisingly few rules about food in the player handbook and the DMG. Let's go over it. So first of all, in the 2024 Player's Handbook, we find rules for food, drink, and lodging on page 231. It gives us a couple tables to work with. There's a table that outlines the prices for basic food items. For example, a mug of ale is 4 copper pieces. A loaf of bread is 2 copper. A cheese wedge is a silver piece. A squalid meal is 1 copper piece. A modest meal is 1 silver piece. A wealthy meal would be 3 silver pieces. And a bottle of common wine would be 2 silver pieces, and so on and so forth. So we find that information there. And that gives us some price guidelines, okay? But then the rules about food get relatively non-existent until we get to page 371 of the 2024 Player's Handbook and find the Malnutrition Hazard entry. By the way, do you struggle to come up with plot arcs on the fly? If so, I have the perfect tool for you. It is called My Ultimate Plot Randomizer. It is a free ebook. When you join my email list, you can download this for free. You'll get the link in your first email. It contains 4 D100 tables that will let you roll random plot arcs whenever you need them. Roll the hook, the conflict, and the conclusion, and even add wild and wacky stuff all right there. Download this, print it out, add it to your tool collection, and you will never go without another plot arc again. I give this away for free to help you create awesome plot arcs just like I do. I use this in almost every single session, and you are not going to want to miss out on this, so make sure you grab this. So malnutrition is actually a hazard that your player can succumb to while playing D&D. Here's what it says. A creature needs an amount of food per day based on its size as shown in a food's needs per day table, which is located below the listing here. A creature that eats but consumes less than half the required food for a day must succeed on a DC 10 con saving throw or gain 1 exhaustion level at the day's end. A creature that eats nothing for 5 days automatically gains 1 exhaustion level at the end of the 5th day, as well as an additional level at the end of each subsequent day without food. All right, ladies and gentlemen, get your spreadsheets out. It's time to do some math. Exhaustion caused by malnutrition can't be removed until the creature eats the full amount of food required for a day. Food needs per day are as follows. A tiny-sized creature needs a quarter pound of food. A small-sized creature needs 1 pound of food per day. A medium-sized creature needs 1 pound. Large-sized creature needs 4 pounds. A huge creature needs 16 pounds. And a gargantuan creature, for all of those of you running gargantuan creatures out there, needs a whopping 64 pounds of food. Let's also not forget to look a little bit closer at what exhaustion is in the 2024 Player's Handbook, because if you're anything like me and you used to play 3rd edition, it has changed a lot. We can find the exhaustion condition on page 366 of the 2024 Player's Handbook. Here's what it says. While you have the exhaustion condition, you experience the following effects. Exhaustion levels. This condition is cumulative. Each time you receive it, you gain 1 exhaustion level. You die if your exhaustion level is 6. Seemingly an arbitrary number, but okay. D20 tests are affected. When you make a D20 test, this roll is reduced by 2 times your exhaustion level. You got exhaustion 2, you're taking -4 to every D20 test. Speed reduced. Your speed is reduced by a number of feet equal to 5 times your exhaustion level. 5 times the level. If you have an exhaustion level 3 and your movement speed is 30, guess what? You can move half as fast now, removing exhaustion levels. Finishing a long rest removes one of your exhaustion levels. When your exhaustion level reaches 0, the condition ends. With that being said, when we look at the rules, we see that for the very little amount of information given, that it is a surprisingly technical thing to track. So how do you make this fun is the real question. How do you actually make this enjoyable? And I have 2 tips for this. Number 1, I'm going to operate based on the assumption that you as a GM do not want to track specific food items for your whole party. Let me just say that this would be an absolute nightmare. Trying to keep a spreadsheet of all of the individual ration items your group is carrying would be akin to torture, like intellectual torture. This would be very difficult to do, and I have a serious doubt that there are many GMs out there who like this kind of tracking. So how do you even manage to roleplay food when tracking it is so burdensome? I mean, we're talking about, this is worse than tracking arrows and javelins. This is like very detailedly annoying to try to track. However, the fun comes from the survival-esque sort of scarcity roleplay that comes from it, and also from explaining the quality of life that this aspect of the game might have on the characters that the players are playing. So in order to make it fun, we have to do a couple things. Number 1, we need to assign players the task of tracking individual food items, or maybe more specifically, tasking one player character with the task of tracking all of the party's food items. And there's a reason why I'm saying this, and stick with me. Next, we need a reason for it to matter. If the players are going to need to track food for a survival type campaign or for survival type reasons, and if it's sort of a grindy survival type campaign idea, for example, they're traveling across the wilderness and they need to track food, then how do you actually make it fun instead of just making it a math problem? So for example, knowing how many pounds of food you have is a lot different than knowing that you have 1 pound of meat, a cheese wheel, and a flagon of ale, right? Hey, are you tired of using the same old methods to roll up the same old loot over and over again in your games? Well, I have a new, unique, awesome way to generate awesome new loot that your players will never see coming. It's called the Ultimate Dungeon Loot Randomizer. This book comes in an awesome hardcover version or in a very affordable ebook option. It contains mundane dungeon items, mundane weapons and armor. It contains slightly magical dungeon items, magical weapons and armor, cursed items, potions and elixirs, magic scrolls, otherworldly wonders and relics, and even entire chests of loot. It contains 10 massive D100 tables full of awesome dungeon loot that you can roll, flavor however you want, set it at whatever power level you want, and best of all, it is system agnostic, so you can use it with any fantasy TTRPG. If you want to really level up your dungeon loot, grab this, link is in the description, order your copy today. This is a much different sort of experience. It's more difficult to track it piece by piece. However, when we track it piece by piece, we open up another kind of sector of role play in regards to food, which is quality of life role play for player characters. Now, not every party is going to be interested in this type of role play, but it can actually be a fun thing to do, especially if you have a player who's interested in it. So here is what I would recommend, and this is part of tip number 1. Before you start your campaign at session 0, sit down with your players and ask, there is going to be a survival-esque quality of life element to this campaign. And with that being said, we must make the crucial decision about whether we're going to track food by the pound or whether we want to track quality of food and make it a factor in the game. If we track food from a quality of life perspective, and I can get one of you to volunteer to not only track the food, but to also volunteer your player character to be the cook and to decide what meals you're going to prepare for the party whenever they sit down to meals, and then sort of very basically in a fast, efficient way, role play out how you're going to prepare that food. And if your checks are successful, okay, everyone is going to get a benefit. Maybe that benefit could be over the course of that day, they get 1 extra advantage to add to any skill check or attribute check or really any check at all. If you offer a sort of incentive like this, you offer an in-game benefit, then you might have a player who would think, you know what? I love tracking things. I'll track our food and I'll figure out what we're going to make for meals and I'll track it all on my sheet and keep track of it. That way there's a survival element and there's a quality of life element and there's a tangible reason for why the players may want to do this. And that also brings up making shopping more fun because when you go to a tavern, guess what? Your cook might actually want to shop for specific food items to try to make the meals better. Why is this, you say? Because every time you have the cook roll to see if they cook well for the food, you can do this. You can give a general bonus based on the range of ingredients used, which would sort of be like indicating diversity in the food. In other words, if all we're eating is rice, this is probably not going to be quite as tasty as if we are eating rice and salt pork flavored with some sage, with some awesome tomato sauce on the side. That meal is probably going to score a lot better with the common folk of the party than just rice by the pound. Thus, they're way more likely to like the meal, which means the cook is way more likely to pass the cook check if they have a range of diverse ingredients. And then the party, emboldened and empowered by the amazing breakfast they got to start the day, will be ready to attack with advantage at least once over the course of the next 24 hours because they were fed so well. Also, very fun idea. You could have your cook compile a cookbook of all the meals they made. And then when you get together for your games, if you get together in person, you can actually prepare meals for your party based on the cookbook created by your cook as they were cooking in game on the trail. This would be so zany and may not work for everyone, but it could be a really fun bonus idea. Anyway, just had to throw that in. And this brings us to really my tip number 2, which is bring foraging into the mix. Now, when your characters are out in the wilderness, foraging becomes a much more important thing, and it becomes sort of a funner, more interesting thing when you're running a quality of life food element to your campaign instead of just food by the pound. Let me go over the foraging rules for you from the DMG. Characters can gather food and water as the party travels at a normal or slow pace. A foraging character makes a wisdom survival check whenever you call for it, with the DC determined by the abundance of food and water in the region. So foraging DCs are as follows. If there's abundant food and water sources around, the DC would be 10. If there are limited food and water sources, the DC would be 15. Or if there are very little, if any, food and water sources, the DC would be 20. If multiple characters forage, each character makes a separate check. A foraging character finds nothing on a failed check. On a successful check, roll 1d6 plus the character's wisdom modifier to determine how much food in pounds the character finds, then repeat the roll in water or for water in gallons. And just to clarify, this is found on page 111 of the DMG. One thing that is not located in the foraging section of the DMG is a handy random roll table for food items found in nature. But I went ahead and I took the liberty of putting one of these together. I am including a free D100 PDF random roll table for foraged food and liquid items. You can find this down in the description under foraging random table. And this is just a free gift to you. This is on my Google Drive. I put this together specifically for this video because when I read those rules, I thought we need a foraging D100 table. Why else would you even have foraging if you can't roll on a table to see what you find? With that being said, you can grab that and download it. There is no cost, and it's just something I put together and something I'm probably going to use next time I run a foraging encounter in my D&D games. With all of that being said, I really hope that this has been informative. The goal here is to first determine if you want to use a quality of life food element in your campaigns. And then if you can find someone who will take charge of it, because that's actually kind of an important part. Someone kind of has to take charge of it because there's a little bit of heavy lifting with the numbers and tracking the stuff in that. But if you can find someone willing, and someone actually might be willing, this could actually be a really fun thing for some players. Some players love stuff like this. And so you might have a player at your table who would love to take on this kind of challenge and be able to provide those kinds of like benefits to their group. And you might even be willing to dole out more incentives than even just advantage ones a day. You can like find interesting ways to adapt this to your game in your group. With that being said, I think that the second part of this is using the foraging to supplement it. So there's the shopping and the foraging, and these are kind of like adjacent interesting encounter possibilities that you can use to enhance that whole area of the game. Now, shopping takes on a new dimension. Do they have different types of cheese? What kind of meats do they have? Do they have any spices or herbs? Can we get salt here? Right? These are all questions that become a lot more important now. And then, secondly, when we're foraging, what types of foods are we finding? And now foraging could be actually even more exciting than it used to be. So there you go. There's my 2 cents on that. I hope that this has helped you to understand how you can make food in your D&D campaigns way more exciting and more fun. Of course, it will depend on the group. Not every group will be into this kind of thing. But if your party is a party who seems like they would be into this kind of thing, then these are the steps that I would use to put this into motion and make it a lot more fun and awesome. With that being said, thank you so much for coming back for another one of my videos. I'm here almost every day creating videos about the best game in the world, D&D. So I will see you awesome people on the next one.